passing 12 nautical miles through the empty stretch of the Arabian Sea on a moonless, cloudless night. The calm, dark water was about to be shattered by a plan built for exactly one purpose: destruction. The guided missile destroyer USS Paul Hamilton, an Arleigh Burke-class warship, was carrying out a routine boarding of a Panamanian-flagged crude oil tanker called Caspian Horizon, a vessel suspected of violating Washington's newly tightened sanctions enforcement rules. An MH-60R Seahawk drone hovering above the tanker's deck swept its searchlight across the bridge, while the destroyer's SPY-1D phased array radar swept quietly in emissions-controlled mode, listening rather than broadcasting. Then the thermal feed from the Seahawk went completely white. A burst of high-power, high-frequency electromagnetic energy tore out from beneath the tanker's deck plating, frying the helicopter's optics and severing its communications link in an instant. At the same moment, steel cargo containers at the stern of the Caspian Horizon split open on hydraulic rams, revealing rows of modified Shahed-238 loitering munitions, their rocket motors already screaming to life. These were not the slow, clumsy drones people remembered from the skies over Ukraine. These were built for saturation, sea-skimming, and layered to flood the air with targets no single system could sort through. Aboard the Paul Hamilton, the combat controller lost the picture in under 3 seconds. Link 16, the network that ties every American ship and aircraft together, was suddenly choked with thousands of contradictory ghost tracks. An Iranian electronic warfare node hidden aboard the tanker was broadcasting spoofed NATO identification codes, telling every friendly system that the incoming swarm was friendly too. The Phalanx close-in weapon system, the 20mm Gatling gun, meant to be the destroyer's last line of defense, stood down, fooled into believing the threat was a friend. The most advanced air defense network the United States Navy had ever fielded had just been blinded and neutralized by a single merchant ship. But the drone swarm overhead was only the diversion. The real killer had already slipped into the water. Beneath the churning waves, the sonar technician aboard the Paul Hamilton picked up a signature climbing in pitch and frequency in a way that broke every rule he understood about how torpedoes were supposed to sound. It was the unmistakable signature of an Iranian supercavitating torpedo, the weapon known as Hoot. It was closing on the destroyer without meeting any real resistance from the water around it, moving at an almost unbelievable 200 knots. At that speed, the gap between first detection and impact was less than 40 seconds. There was no defense in the Navy's playbook built to beat that clock. This was never a random skirmish born out of nowhere. It was a deliberately engineered Iranian operation, meant not just to humiliate Washington, but to shift the entire balance of power in the Persian Gulf. Tehran's plan was simple in concept and brutal in execution. Use the Caspian Horizon as bait to pull an American destroyer into a kill zone chosen months in advance. The Shahed swarm was there to occupy the sky and the sensors, while the real blow, the one meant to kill, would come from underwater, from an Iranian nuclear-powered submarine lying in wait beneath the surface. And the true center of this operation sat 150 miles away, buried deep in the heart of Iranian command and control. The instant the Paul Hamilton's radar was jammed into silence, Revolutionary Guard units opened fire from mobile launchers with Desful and Fateh hypersonic ballistic missiles, targeting the Dwight D. Eisenhower carrier strike group sitting just beyond the horizon. With the destroyer's radar down, a fatal hole had just opened in the carrier's early warning coverage. Tehran believed it had built the perfect layered kill web, an asymmetric trap stacked across multiple domains at once, designed to force the United States into either a humiliating withdrawal or the loss of a $5 billion aircraft carrier. It's worth pausing on that for a second, because if you were the admiral commanding that strike group, with seconds on the clock and half your picture gone dark, what call would you have made? Inside the Paul Hamilton's Combat Information Center, the countdown to oblivion kept running. 30 seconds to torpedo impact. The captain knew firing a countermeasure torpedo straight into the wall of a supercavitation bubble would accomplish nothing, since the acoustic shockwave alone would sever the guidance wire trailing behind it. What he needed instead was time Time to finish processing the incoming torpedo's targeting data. This weapon gave off no internal acoustic pings to jam. It was being steered by a spool of fiber optic cable unspooling behind it, a physical link running all the way back to a controller near the Caspian coastline. The order went out: scramble the Navy special operators. Radio silence, strict night vision protocol, every transponder killed. 2 MH-60R Seahawks pushed their engines to the limit, punching through thick smoke pouring off the tanker's burning drone launch containers. The pilots were forced to drop below the ceiling of Iran's jamming envelope, skimming barely 15 feet above the wave crests to get their SEAL teams onto the tanker's bow. What waited on that deck was close to hell itself. Heat radiating off the drone launch tubes was unbearable, and the steel deck plating had heated up like a stovetop. Carrying roughly 80 pounds of gear apiece, 12 SEAL operators hit the deck fighting, moving straight into close-quarters combat against Revolutionary Guard naval commandos dug into the ship's superstructure. Green laser beams from their PEQ-15 aiming modules cut through the chemical smoke, and their M4A1 rifles carved a path through the dark toward the aft command module, where the fiber optic spool controlling the torpedo was housed. With just 15 seconds left before impact, the Hoot torpedo was running roughly 5,000 yards below the surface. The sonar operator aboard the Paul Hamilton could hear the roar of its cavitation bubble tearing through the ocean, a sound like a bullet fired underwater. The captain gave the order to hard turn the ship to starboard, throwing the 9,000-ton warship into a 30-degree heel. But the math did not care about the maneuver. The torpedo's track was set to strike the aft engine room. At the same moment, 40,000 feet overhead, the crisis jumped a level. The commander of the Eisenhower strike group understood that his escort destroyer was in mortal danger, and that his own carrier now stood exposed to a hypersonic missile strike, and he sent an urgent flash message to Central Command. The authorized response code came back: Eagle Claw, execute. On Diego Garcia, hundreds of miles away, the reinforced blast doors of a hardened aircraft shelter rolled open. As engines spun up, the radar signatures of 2 B-2 Spirit stealth bombers lit against the runway lights. Slung in their bomb bays were 30,000-pound massive ordnance penetrator bombs, designated GBU-57, bunker busters built for exactly one kind of target. That target was Iran's uranium enrichment facility at Fordo, buried 300 feet beneath a mountain. There would be no measured tactical response this time, just a single strike meant to erase the nuclear program outright. The standoff had just crossed into a different category of danger altogether, one where the next step upward was nuclear. Back aboard the Caspian Horizon, the SEAL team hit the aft command module. It was a cramped room packed with server racks, fiber termination boxes, and a Russian-made Krasuka 4 jamming unit, the same system responsible for the electronic silence blanketing the area. An Iranian technician manning the tactical headset fought desperately to keep the data link to the Hoot torpedo alive. A flashbang round blinded the defenders for a critical instant. Inside that 10 by 10 foot steel compartment, suppressed HK-416 rifle fire was still deafening at close range. 5 seconds to impact. Near the base of the fiber spool housing, a thick orange fiber optic line ran taut through its mounting, and the lead SEAL, his night vision damaged by a stray round, spotted it in the chaos. He raised his Mk-18 close-quarters battle rifle, put 3 precise rounds through the glass relay ports on the spool mechanism, shattering them, then drew his tactical tomahawk and hacked through the exposed strands. The roar of the Hoot's acoustic signature, still echoing through the Paul Hamilton's sonar display, changed instantly, and everyone in that room understood exactly what it meant. The fiber optic link was severed. The damage to the spool housing had corrupted the torpedo's inertial guidance. Missing the destroyer's screws by roughly 15 feet, the Hoot lost speed, went dark, and sank into the deep, eventually crushed by pressure far below. There, its fuel finally ran out for good. The Paul Hamilton looked like a ship that had run out of road. On the surface, the SEALs had pulled off the extraction, ripping the jamming module free and pulling hard drives from the Krasuka system, all while calling in close air support to mop up the remaining Shaheds. Finally breaking through the spoofed frequencies, an EA-18 Growler, launched from the Eisenhower, fired its next-generation jammer, the NGJ pod, blasting a high-power signal that collapsed the drone swarm's control network. Dozens of Shahed-238s tumbled out of formation and fell into the sea, a hard rain of scrap metal. With the air assault broken, Iranian shore batteries lost radar lock on the carrier strike group entirely. Tehran had run out of time at the worst possible moment. The commanders standing by their Fateh-1 hypersonic missiles, fingers on the trigger for a coordinated launch, concluded the ambush had failed. Firing anyway would have guaranteed the kind of B-2 response Tehran had built this whole operation specifically to avoid. The Paul Hamilton limped away from the scene under its own power. Its hull paint was untouched, but its electronics had been gutted by the microwave assault, essentially blinded from the inside. The Caspian Horizon, its cover blown, sat dead in boiling water, smoke pouring from a hull that had just given up its secrets built from a mix of Iranian and Russian technology. Nobody at the Pentagon was celebrating. The hard drives pulled off the tanker revealed something far more unsettling. The targeting algorithms guiding the Hoot torpedo were running artificial intelligence sourced from an outside supplier, and the electronic warfare suite aboard was practically a mirror image of the Navy's own Link 16 architecture. Iran had not only built the trap, it had learned how to get inside the American fleet's own nervous system. As the sun came up over the Strait of Hormuz, the two B-2 Spirit bombers kept flying toward Iranian airspace, holding just outside the edge of Iran's air defense identification zone. Nobody called them back. Central Command's alert status stayed locked in the highest posture. The tanker had simply been detained, but the standoff between two nations now sat closer than ever to full-blown war, the line between an isolated naval clash and a regional firestorm thinner than it had ever been. The era of quiet proxy fights in the Gulf was effectively over. What happened out there was a bomb still ticking, and there's no guarantee that next time a SEAL team happens to be close enough to reach it in time. Whether sending those B-2 bombers in to flatten Fordow would have been the right show of strength, or whether it would have been the spark for something the world could never walk back, is the kind of question that doesn't have a clean answer, and it's worth sitting with for a moment before deciding what you actually believe.